Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I have some good coffee this morning. I have some good coffee. Ceasefire, supposedly, in quotes, ceasefire. Trump comes out, says, I've gotten a ceasefire. Everybody's going to effectively stop shooting each other, and we're going to bring this to a close. There were questions about the time. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion around when that ceasefire was going to start. Arghachi comes out, foreign minister for Iran. He says, we haven't declared a ceasefire. He says, we have said that if Israel stops attacking us, we'll stop attacking Israel. That's what we said. Effectively, we reserve the right to kick ass when we need to. So there was confusion around it. Donald Trump, habitual liars have a tendency to lie, so it wasn't necessarily clear on what was going on. Eventually, Israel comes out, accepts it. Eventually, the Iranian government comes out and accepts it. But before they accept it, they each launch attacks. Israel attacks Tehran in a brutal attack. Tehran, or Iran, responds at the very last minute, like 4 minutes before the ceasefire goes through. They put a withering attack on Israel that is breathtaking, and I will show you that attack. But before I get into the videos themselves, we should be very clear on something. This is a loss for Trump. This is not a win. This is not success. And Trump is running around trying to make this notion of victory, and I am deeply unclear on where he is getting this idea of victory from. We need to orient ourselves. This has been 12 days, but we need to orient ourselves on the reality of what took place. Donald Trump goes into fake negotiations because he claims that there is a mythical bomb that Iran is trying to create. Okay. In talking about this mythical bomb, he wants to get into negotiations with Iran. He says, I'm going to bomb him, I'm going to bomb him, I'm going to bomb him. He's spent months saying he's going to bomb them if they don't come to a deal. The entire way through, it became very clear that this was not legitimate. There's historical context. The historical context being we've knocked over Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Iran, last man standing. Trump surrounded by a bunch of whack job neocons. And I would imagine they're whispering in his ear. They're weak. We can take them over. This will be a political win. They're weak. We can knock them over. This will be a political win. I would wager to you that that's what they were telling Donald Trump, especially if we give the benefit of the doubt and say Trump doesn't want a long war in the Middle East. Okay. Trump engages in negotiations, gets across to the Iranians that while they're in negotiations, they are safe. This lulls Iran into a false sense of security. Trump gives the green light for Israel to attack Iran. Everybody and their mama at that point understood that Trump gave that green light. And despite the attempts at plausible deniability at the very beginning of it, Trump, being Trump, comes out and starts crowing when he thinks that this is a success. Not only were there external attacks taking place, all sorts of Mossad, MI6, CIA, all of these people activate. And as they activate, they are creating waves of terror throughout Iran. And on top of creating those waves of terror, using drones internally in the country to decimate the ability for Iran to respond, to hit air defense, meaning it was an attack externally and internally, simultaneously, with the U.S., A, arming Israel to the hilt, B, given the green light to do it, there's that. Reloading their planes as those planes bomb Iran. And Trump crowing that we told you should have made the deal. We told you this was going to happen. We told you. Meaning the U.S. and Israel were intimately connected in the attack, obviously. But I'm trying to point out that this was a putsch attempt. In addition to the whack jobs internally in Iran, that was this fifth column that was effectively trying to inhibit the Iranian ability to respond, Israel goes on decapitation strikes, trying to kill scientists, leadership of the military, etc., and they're successful in doing so. And to make it even weirder, the son of the Shah, comes out of getting his mani-pedi and decides, I am now the official ruler of Iran, and I am opposition, even though I'm somewhere else, not in Tehran. It was a putsch attempt. They tried to overthrow the government of Iran, externally and internally. Fast forward to 48 hours later, and Iran starts to respond. And they respond. And they respond. And initially, air defense is able to knock a lot of the stuff out the sky. But as Ryan pointed out, these are old ballistic missiles. When they started using the newer stuff, they started to get through. The Israeli air defense is incapable of stopping them from getting through. And Iran takes it upon itself to reorganize the skyline of Tel Aviv. This goes on for 12 days. As I pointed out, a country of 8 million versus a country of 90 million. Who do you think can absorb more punishment? Even if Israel is able to double the punishment that Iran can inflict, who do you think can tolerate that for longer? On top of Israel running out of air defense, because after all, the US spent 3 years of air defense in Ukraine. So the amount of air defense that it could ever give Israel was always limited because you could only produce so many of these at any particular one time. Israel starts to wear down. It becomes clear they are wearing down. Haifa is hit. Tel Aviv is hit. Both of them are hit over and over again. Hypersonic missiles, all sorts of weird missiles that Iran is coming up with all of these different names. And they get through, weaving, bobbing, getting through. Haifa goes down, goes dark. Tel Aviv, shambles, complete and utter shambles. Israel puts a blackout on any information that is supposed to get out, and yet information still gets out on those strikes. Do you honestly believe if Israel believed they were in a dominant position, that they would have been begging Donald Trump for a ceasefire? It's that. Trump, recognizing that his colony, his client, is in trouble, says, we are going to bomb the nuclear sites. We're going to get now involved. And they go on a bombing run that is primarily theatrical, hitting nuclear sites. But lo and behold, Iran had already removed the nuclear materials and the things that were necessary for their nuclear program to somewhere else. Because after you spend a week talking about a particular site that you're going to hit, it is rational for people to say, hey, they're going to hit that site. And they move those items and they move those people so there are no casualties. And the damage that is done, despite the fact Trump is screaming obliteration, seems much, much less. Question: where's the nuclear material? Right? J.D. Vance, recently in an interview, when asked, they say, we don't know. Grossi, the one that was giving information to the Israelis to murder Iranian scientists, we don't know. And we demand that Iran gives us the information. Iran is saying, fuck you. We're not giving you shit. Lavrov is like, why would they do that? That information could be leaked, as it was leaked before by your office. So what started off as a premise for preventing Iran from getting nukes because they had enriched uranium, whereas that enriched uranium and the sites were being inspected. A, they don't know where it is. B, the sites aren't being inspected. C, Iran is now having conversations with the United States or Israel, meaning there are no talks. Meaning all of those talks that were supposed to, deal with enrichment, gone. And more to the point, as I kept saying, A, Iran may need a skirmish in order to get respect. And B, that respect would need to be taken at the barrel of a gun every bit as much as Ukraine or Russia was able to take the respect at the barrel of a gun in Ukraine. I've been right on this, or at the very least close. So now what? You have a ceasefire. Your proxy that you were using to attack when they didn't come to the table for your deal, that proxy has been diminished, significantly so. This notion of Israeli invincibility, these people were living in sewers or hanging out in sewers, hanging out in bomb shelters. Just so we have some context for what was taking place and what Israel was going through, this is what Tel Aviv looks like in regards to the information that just came out, meaning Israel put a silence on any data coming out in regards to how bad those attacks were. This was Haifa. Here's another video of Haifa burning. There's a power plant. I'm not going to go through a lot of these. I'm trying to make the point that the reason that they're stopping is not because if things were going great, they would like to keep going over the government. I mean, after all, Donald Trump was saying, hey, cool, maybe we should kill the Ayatollah. All of this stuff was being thrown out as if it was the most casual thing in the world. Iran continued their strikes. They continue hitting Tel Aviv. They continue hitting Haifa. They hit Ashdod, Akalon, all of these different sites, knocking down power facilities, hitting Mossad locations, hitting education locations, meaning the Weizmann Institute of Science. They were hitting Israel in a way that they have never been hit before. I accept that Iran paid a heavy toll to do it. I'm trying to point out that this is a first for Israel. And all of those people that decided to flee and leave, the Israeli economy that's in tatters, and at the end of it all, the Iranian government still exists, the nuclear program still exists, and any notion of negotiations with the United States over it seems to be off the table, or at the very least, oblivious at this point. And to finish it off, when Iran ended it, they ended it with an exclamation point, being the last one to fire a shot. Because as they pointed out, you started this war. It will end with us ending it. And the exclamation point that they put on that 4 minutes before the ceasefire went into effect.
Why? Why?
Whew, that missile is going fast. That missile is going fast. Would you like a better view of that missile, audience? Would you like a better view of that missile? Here's another view of it. Another angle. Everything looks okay. The word is great. Everything looks okay. The word is great. Whew, that is some bitter coffee. That is some bitter coffee. Would you like another angle? Here's another angle. This is what it looked like after the fact. That's what it looked like. Bir Asaba, I believe is what the location is called. Of course, ambulance services and everything else is being called into play. I don't know if there was a hypersonic missile, but Lord knows that thing looked like it was coming in with speed of Thor. Here's another angle, just so you can see the damage that takes place on the inside of the building and the emotional damage that takes place when these things go off.
Боже, що було?
She is having a bad day. She is having a bad day. She's having a bad day, to put it mildly. That's what this looks like also today. Again, like 4 minutes before ceasefire went through. And again, just to be clear, Israel hit Tehran hard before the ceasefire went through also. So this is not a one-way thing, but They were making an exclamation point to close this out. Close it out. Israel comes out and says, Iran has violated the ceasefire. They say Iran has violated the ceasefire. Iran has said, no, we have not violated the ceasefire. Nothing has been fired off. Nothing's been shot. You're effectively making this up. Then Iran comes out and says, you violated the ceasefire. You kept firing until 9 o'clock. Okay. I have no idea. Question. What does Lebanon think of Israel's ceasefires? Huh? Isn't that an interesting question? Considering Israel has violated every ceasefire they've entered into, and consider that the United States does not care that Israel has violated every ceasefire that they've entered into, what does the ceasefire mean in real terms? When, not if, when Israel violates the ceasefire after they reload, rearm, and all of this other stuff, will the U.S. point out, hey, Israel violated the ceasefire? That would be shocking considering they haven't done it in either Gaza or Lebanon. In fact, before people say, Jamal, you're being an asshole, you're laughing at that woman who, probably lost her home. Just so you understand what Israel has been doing as we've been paying attention to this war. Look at this. Look. Who do you think they're shooting at, by the way? Who do you think they're shooting at? Zombies? You can call them zombies, starving human beings at food ports. Oh, this gets worse. This gets worse. These are the hospitals that Israel have destroyed in Gaza. Like 93%. Yes, that's an entire list. That's an entire list. Here's another one of an Israeli soldier treating killing people like it's a video game, using a controller firing off at, imagine. Here is trigger warning. Israel killed 47 people across the Palestinian territories yesterday. And mind you, many of these people were just trying to get food. Many were just trying to get food. They just wanted to eat. I could show you what Gaza looks like today, if that's what you require of me. So when I'm taking this position of being a hard ass, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's not because I'm heartless. It's not because I'm an asshole. It's not because of any of those things. I watch human beings starving, emaciated, hungry, get murdered every day in and day out. It's my job on some level. And in watching that happen, you had a war that was taking place that took the predominance of the vision, the predominance of our attention and our focus. But outside of our focus, those massacres were taking place day in, day out. The ovens kept running, the trains kept going. Massacre after massacre, like 100 people a day. It just so happened it was out of eyeshot. Now, would those massacres have taken place even if the war wasn't going on? Yes, they would have. Yes, they would have. The world has decided that there are groups of people that are disposable. And they just so happen to be Arab, they just so happen to be Muslim. And because there's a superpower that's backing this colony, nobody cares. A war takes place. All of the attention goes towards the war. And the massacres keep happening. The massacres keep happening. I've seen some people, I'm waiting on my guest, I don't know where he is. I've seen some people to make the argument, well, Israel started the war because they wanted to kill more Gazans. No, you're getting that wrong. You're getting that wrong. Israel has been killing Gazans for the last 2 years. The world has watched them do it. Why would they need a war to do what they've already been doing? I understand why people want to find something more to it than that. But this is not five-dimensional chess. As I pointed out, the objective was the destruction of the Iranian government. The Iranian government proved to be more resilient than what I would imagine the people around Trump told him that it would be. Larry Johnson pointed out that they were telling Trump that Iran is weak, that they're running out of missiles, that we can knock over the government. But the reality of it is, Israel was put through perdition in a way that it just was not accustomed to. And because it wasn't accustomed to it, they backed away. Now, there's reporting that the US and Israel has used 20 years worth of air defense over this 12 days. Think about that. 20-year production of air defense. Now, again, a lot of this has to do with you fought a war in Ukraine for 3 years. All of the materials, all of the armaments, all of the Patriot missiles, all of the Patriot missile systems. Think of all of the things that were destroyed and used in pursuit of trying to take down the Russians for 3 years, and it didn't work. And now you're engaged in a sharp, blunt war with Iran. At the very least, your client. And Iran is firing some of everything. Here's our stockpile for the last 20 years that we've been preparing to use against the US. Here's our drones. And you're using this expensive equipment to take that stuff down. I hope you get what I'm getting at. How is this a success by any measure for Donald Trump? He may say, I got a ceasefire. You got a ceasefire in the war that you started. You started that war. Nobody else did. You started that war. So the notion that you got a ceasefire is kind of, astonishing that you can wrap your head and say that. Not to mention, one last point. When Iran attacked the base in Qatar, I know a lot of people said it was weak. But as I pointed out, the objective was to reach parity, not to go all in where you're trying to pull the U.S. into a larger conflict. The U.S. would have preferred Iran on some level to pull them into the conflict, at the very least some elements of the U.S. government. I don't know if that included Trump, but some elements definitely did. I don't think Donald Trump reads policy papers. So their goal was parity with the notion of focusing on Israel. It was weak on purpose. But don't mistake it weak for inconsequential. When is the last time Iran attacked a military base of the United States? Can you think of a moment when that happened? I can't. I can't think of a moment where the Iranian government launched an attack, real or otherwise, at a U.S. base. That's an amazing thing. And I would like to put that in the context of when the first back and forth with Israel happened. What did Iran do? The first was theatrical. We are showing you capability. We will tell you where these are going to be. It is theatrical, but we're trying to make a point because we don't want to get involved in a war. And the U.S. and Israel looked at that and said they're weak. True promise 2. We will show you capability that we can hit your base, and you can't stop us from hitting your base. We don't want a larger war. And what did the U.S. and Israel say? They're weak. We can prey upon them. Okay. True promise 3. And Israel gets a new skyline. They get a new skyline. So if we take that logic and apply it to this, what does it mean? First one is a warning. It's a warning of our willingness to attack that base if you push us into a corner. That's not trivial. That's not minor. I'm trying to make the point that a lot of people are going to say, well, look at the death toll. Iran is like 1,000 people dead. I have no idea how many people Israel has dead because they've put a silence and a gag order on people being able to talk about it. Beyond the gag order and the silence, though, Iran's objective wasn't to murder people. Israel's always is. Iran was going after targets to damage the capability of the state to function. Power centers, Mossad agencies, Ministry of the Interior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're making your life miserable. Every building that we blow up, that woman who's crying on camera, who's wailing about her house being blown up. I don't know if she wailed that much when Gazans' homes were blown up. She has another passport and can go elsewhere.
Боже, що було?
Here's a question. Are Gazans human beings? Are Gazans human beings? When their homes are blown up, do you think they feel it as deeply as that woman did? When their kids are killed, do you think they feel it as deeply? When their, cars, transportation, when they're being humiliated and maligned, do you think they feel it as deeply as that woman did losing that place? Yes, they do. And the scale of destruction of Gaza, that is nothing. That is nothing. That woman would take her passport and she would go back home. That's what would happen. I want to show something else to make my point that much clearer. This is J.D. Vance. Listen to what J.D. Vance says here, because you should fall out of your seat, considering everything that has just taken place in regards to this kind of short, brutal, blunt war between the U.S. and Israel against Iran on, again, fake premise of nuclear weapons.
You said totally obliterated. The president has said totally obliterated the Iran nuclear program.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the two mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think this is an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern, and that's what was so successful about our mission.
So after
that is astonishing. That is astonishing. That is breathtaking. That's breathtaking. Do you remember in the very beginning of the negotiations where Steve Witkoff went to Iran or Oman, Rome at one point to negotiate? Witkoff goes, Iran says, hey, we're willing to limit enrichment to 3.6%. We'll get rid of the 60%, 3.6%. Witkoff says, that's a great idea. Why did Witkoff say it was a great idea? Witkoff said it was a great idea because, hey, we accept that you want to keep nuclear enrichment because you're a sovereign country, you can do whatever you want. We accept that. We want to ensure that you can't use it for a weapon. And so Witkoff seemingly agreed with the foreign minister of Iran that we will keep it to 3.6%. Witkoff comes back. Witkoff goes on Sean Hannity and says that, meaning we have agreement on that. Witkoff is brutally attacked. Rubio becomes the talking point in this and says effectively, we need a Libyan model. We need no enrichment. Trump comes out, we need no enrichment. None, zero, no enrichment. And Iran says, kick rocks. Trump goes to Saudi Arabia, and not just no enrichment, we need you to stop giving weapons because you guys are terrorists. As he shakes hands with a literal head chopper. He's a good looking guy. The point that I'm making is that what J.D. Vance just said there was what the foreign minister of Iran had already agreed upon. It is the Trump administration that said no enrichment. Iran was never trying to get a bomb. Iran was willing to cut enrichment to levels that were breathtakingly low in order to keep their nuclear program going. And they were willing to make a deal. J.D. Vance, after all of this, after all these people dead, after all of that stuff blown up, after the skyline of Tel Aviv being completely reshaped, after Tel Aviv looking like a ghost town, I mean, for God's sake, look at this. Look at this, look at this. After all of this, J.D. Vance now comes to a decision that, hey, the issue is not really where it is. The issue is that they don't have enough to make a bomb. And they don't have enough to make a bomb. And so because they don't have enough to make a bomb, everything is, copacetic. We did a great job. We did great work. We did fantastic. That's Tel Aviv, by the way, not Gaza. We did fantastic. We did fantastic. Everything went absolutely according to plan. No hiccups at all. Everything worked out just right. Just right. Everything went fantastic. Everything went perfectly and according to plan. No issues in Greece. The president and his leadership was just awesome. It was just awesome. Ain't that amazing? Ain't that amazing? The way in which they try to... Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here at all. There is no spoon. There is no spoon. Don't even need to believe in a spoon at all. Just amazing. Everything is great. Everything is great. Nothing to see here. No issues. No concerns. No problems. Yeah, just astonishing. My main point, this is not indicative of success. This is not what success looks like. That's not what success looks like. J.D. Vance can try to convince you of that all he wants. This is not what success looks like. I can show you video after video of this. And now they're trying to reframe all of it. And I'm saying the very fact that they're trying to reframe all of it is indicative of failure, not success. They pulled in a ceasefire because they didn't like the damage that was happening to their client. It's just that. Do you honestly believe they care about Tehran? Do you honestly believe that Donald Trump would have been screaming for a ceasefire if Israel was inflicting sufficient damage on Tehran over Iran, where it looked like Iran was buckling? Do you honestly believe that Donald Trump would have done that? I don't. So yeah, so he comes out, puts out this ceasefire is in effect. Please do not violate Donald Trump, President of the United States. So again, I end where I began on this. When Israel does violate it, then what? Then what? One last point. Well, what time is it? Okay, I'm assuming my guest is not coming. Yeah, I'm assuming my guest is not coming. One last point. Israel has persistently violated one ceasefire after the next. They are killing people in Lebanon as we speak, bombing in Lebanon. Every deal that was made with Gaza was effectively changed or ignored, and the United States did nothing about the fact that they were changed or ignored. They have used ceasefires not as tools for peace, but tools for war, effectively allowing that ceasefire as a means by which to conduct war in subversive ways, to effectively say, hey, we have an agreement. When I break the agreement, you will say nothing. When you break the agreement, I will scream to high heaven. And that is the way that they've effectively used those ceasefires. Now, hopefully, Iran knows that. Hopefully, Iran is perfectly aware that that is exactly the way that ceasefires have been used in the past, not just in the Middle East, but also with the Minsk agreements. Think back. We have an agreement. We are using this agreement as supposed to end the war. Instead of using it to end the war, they decide to use it to help Ukraine build up the largest military in Europe. So Iran engages in this, having to know of previous behavior and usage of that ceasefire. And that ceasefire can be used as a tool for the U.S. to get involved in the war. If the U.S. turns around and says, oh my God, Iran violated the ceasefire, do they get further ensconced in the conflict if indeed they use that as a pretext to do so? I don't know. Do I put it past them? No, I don't. From the Iranian point of view, congratulations, you held your own. And I say that understanding the lives that were lost and everything else. But the superpower was not able to make you submit. You did not lose your sovereignty. And you gave a bloody nose to a fascist, genocidal colony of squatters in a way that has never happened in my lifetime. And in a way that has destroyed any notion of peace, security, that we can effectively impose our will on other countries in the region. They could not impose their will upon you. Yes, they have nukes. So you had to deal with this conflict in somewhat of a box. As Mark pointed out, you can't really turn them to glass because ultimately they have an existential option of a nuclear weapon. By the same token, you cannot accept their imposition of trying to diminish your sovereignty in their attacks, in which case you need to impart pain, a lot of it. I would say not enough, but that is me looking at people being killed by Israel every day and feeling some kind of way about them doing it and wanting a measure of that imparted back. Please understand your role as a global participant in a larger construct. Meaning, you are not an independent actor. You are assisting Russia, or was assisting Russia in its war in Ukraine in regards to the missile systems or the weapon systems you were providing, the drones. And you have 15% of China's oil going to it. You are a target by virtue of your sovereignty. Own that. I'm saying when Russia's asking you, hey, let's work in tandem, don't tell it no. And the fact that the foreign minister of Iran ends up going to Russia on some level is a condemnation of the policy position that they had prior, where they wanted to be an independent Lone Ranger. Understand your role in a global geopolitical order and the world that is trying to be created. You, Russia, China, this rising of Africa, etc. We are trying to create a multipolar world, and we need you to be there as a sovereign state to do it. Internalize that. That's all I'm saying. Internalize that. I want to bring in my